the world is evolving and our relationship to these animals is changing. So it's not that marine parks have done things wrong. They have been doing the best they know how to do, and they have in many cases some of the best caregivers there are. But our ethic around how we want to treat these animals is changing. And it's critically important that as we think about going forward, we're thinking about sanctuaries that can care for these animals permanently, because most of them are not candidates for release. Most were born in captivity. They have no knowledge of eating live fish for food. They have no connection to a wild family pod, and we don't know where their natural families may be. So in that context, any movement for these animals to sanctuaries, which is certainly what we all want and what those animals deserve, need to be thought of as permanent sanctuaries with occasional possibilities for reintroduction to the wild. Certainly many of the people in marine parks today, as they look at what they are used to as their management protocols and as their livelihood, they're critical of the idea of moving whales, moving orca to sanctuaries. And they raise lots of concerns. They raise concerns about the animals won't be able to be cared for. Well, why would they not be able to be cared for in exactly the same way and with the same level of care that they receive in a marine park, while receiving it in a natural environment where they don't have concrete, where their sounds are not reverberating back to them as they ricochet off the concrete walls, and rather they're absorbed in nature, those sounds, exactly as they are in a natural environment. So we think of natural seaside sanctuaries as far more inviting for these animals and likely to provide them a higher quality of life than they could ever receive in a concrete tank. So are there concerns about them being sick? Of course. Will they receive absolutely the best care possible? Of course. And if there are animals that need to be quarantined, then they still have the ability to be quarantined because they're under human care. And they'll be under human care 24/7, 365 for all of their lives. I think the question has been raised as to, do we feel, those of us in the Whale Sanctuary Project, that marine parks are potentially partners to do something like creating a whale sanctuary? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. There could be nothing better than the parks that hold orca and belugas today to decide that they want to create true sanctuaries and move all of their animals from concrete tanks to netted enclosures in nature and habitats that are natural. And if they were to do that and commit to doing it with all their animals, we would applaud them, we would welcome them to work together, and we have already reached out to many of those institutions. So I think what we're looking for is not for us to be the creators of a single sanctuary or the sanctuary, but rather for us to create a model sanctuary that others can follow and that others can do on their own terms, as long as the focus is on the welfare of the animals and not on entertainment for the public and on a commercial product. People have thought Lolita from the Miami Seaquarium should be the first whale. It goes back to her family. And that makes absolutely good sense because we know who her family is. We can observe her family, we can find them, and we can create the opportunity for Lolita to meet her family. Similarly with Corky, the very same lineage is known for her. And therefore, she could be moved from SeaWorld to a natural seaside sanctuary and have the opportunity to hear her family bond, her family language, and perhaps to connect with her family and possibly rebond with them. There are challenges, though, with these animals. Corky and Lolita are quite old. They've been in captivity in both cases for more than 49 years. So are they the best candidates as the first animals to be put into sanctuaries and potentially reintroduced to their families? And we don't know that answer. So my sense is we have to take it a step at a time. We have to ensure that movement of any whale is done with the whale's best welfare in mind, done carefully so that there's as little stress on the animal as possible, and so that as we do this, we open the opportunity for as many animals as possible to be moved to sanctuaries and not limit it to any one or other candidate. The infrastructure that we needed to build, the care we needed to provide, the team that we had to pull together and keep together for year after year after year, all of those infrastructure and personnel issues, physical issues of building an environment that was suitable for Keiko in a natural habitat, all of that is directly applicable to what we'll do going forward. Now, is it exact? Of course not. It's more than 20 years later. Hopefully we've learned some things. And we didn't do everything perfectly with Keiko. We did the best we could. We will do the best we can now with the absolute best advice and knowledge we can bring to bear. But every day in any experience of this nature in the wild is a learning experience. And you have to adapt to the conditions. But I find often that pulling the team together, finding the team, having the camaraderie of a team to work together in often difficult remote environments is as critical an ingredient to success as some of what you have to do directly with the animal. So it's this interaction of the human team and the objectives for the welfare of the animal that has to be managed appropriately. Our ethic as a human species around how we relate to marine mammals, particularly whales in captivity, is rapidly changing. And we're seeing that change in the difficulties that SeaWorld has had. Since the movie Blackfish, SeaWorld has seen a decline in attendance, a decline in profits, and a decline in share price, as the public is voting with their feet and investors are voting by withdrawing their dollars. So the captive industry is of necessity also looking at how should they relate to these animals. And I think in every case, the people who work in these parks sincerely love these animals, they care about them deeply, and they also want what's best for them, but they are conflicted by the need for commercial gain. But there are some just beautiful highlights as to how this is changing. The National Aquarium in Baltimore, under the leadership of John Racanelli, has announced that they are moving their warm water dolphins to a sanctuary that they will create in Florida or the Bahamas. That's terrific news that we should all applaud. That's what we want to see other institutions doing as well. And we're seeing other examples of that throughout the captive industry, and I believe we'll continue to see that as that industry responds to public pressure and responds to how our ethic about how we think about our relationship with these animals is changing.